So I'd like to just start by asking you, Jeremy, how would you describe Three Bridges to people who haven't visited the school?
It's a very good question. How would I describe it? I guess the truth is I probably wouldn't describe it any differently than most head teachers describe their schools. You know, I would say it's a school that is academically rich. I think that the children come away from our school, you know, being able to do the core skills, reading, writing, and solving problems quite strongly. But I would also say that there is a much larger part to what we do here. You know, a big part of our curriculum is around adventure. The children here are not just learning to read, write, and solve problems. They're canoeing and kayaking, learn teamwork and resilience and self-direction. They have a forest school, so that they're learning to you know, build fires and use handheld tools. But I think at the core of all of this, you know, there's lots of things that we can say as teachers about our schools. You know, the great things, the things we're working on. And I can recite to you my school development plan or my self-evaluation of how I think things are going. I can tell you that we're the happiest school on earth and brand us, you know, as we have ourselves in the past. But I guess when people ask me, you know, maybe what's different about Three Bridges or how it is that maybe things are slightly unique here, I would say that there is a really heavy focus on ensuring that the adults in the building are well taken care of. And that goes against the grain, I think, of some of my colleagues perhaps, because lots of my colleagues are saying, we've got to put pupils first, put the children first, that's got to be at the center of all decision making. And I don't want anyone to think that that's what I'm suggesting is a counter to that message. My belief and my experience is that in order, I guess it's simply put like this. There is no pupil well-being, there is no pupil achievement, there is no pupil collaboration, there is no pupil collective responsibility, there is no pupil anything until the adults have experienced that first. I think that's, to me, it's quite a simple equation. If we're not putting our adults in a soil that is nutrient-rich, that will allow them to flourish into whomever they want to be as an educator, they have no chance of doing that effectively and sustainably in a classroom with children. Because sometimes, very often as a child, you have to watch somebody love something before you can learn to love it yourself, like they're showing you the way. And that is an ingredient, you know, that is a nutrient that gets overlooked in many schools, that we need to make sure as leaders that we take care of the people who take care of our people. It's a crucial element. We're a school that is daring to be different for the best, in the best interest of our children. But in order for us to be the very best we can be, our adults need to be the very best they can be. I mean, I don't think it's a complex equation. But unfortunately, the narrative in our country right now is not that. I've been at Three Bridges for 8 years. We looked at, you know, collective responsibility and collaborative design. So taking care of the instructional program. When I started at Three Bridges, you know, the achievement of the children was not great. It was poor. And there were lots of reasons for that at the time. You know, I think that there wasn't a lot of consistency or rigor around the instructional program. It hadn't been clearly disseminated or collaboratively decided. So it was really about taking the bits and pieces that I thought would get the monkeys off of our back and dealing with those things first. So we redesigned, as a collaborative, our instructional programs. And what I mean by that is that I think the school was used to someone coming in and saying, we're going to do this, and I'll be in next week to check that you're doing it, and then I'm going to take a look at your books and your planning to make sure it's to the standard I want, and then that's how I'm going to know you're doing it. And I grew up in a system that does not behave that way, and understand that if you want long-term sustainable impact, you can't treat people that way. So I guess those were the first changes. It was really about interrogating how it was we were going to change. Was it going to be through management practices, or was it going to be through leadership? And that is, I think, for me, that's something that it has become a real challenge in our system in the last decade, that we are dressing up management as leadership, and it's not. So monitoring and scrutinizing and holding people to account and observing lessons and grading things, scrutinizing books, scrutinizing planning, making people submit things a week in advance, all of that sort of stuff, like those are management practices. And I'm not suggesting that there is no place for management in schools. Management helps systems run effectively, organizations run smoothly. But we can't dress it up as leadership, because it's not. It's a part of effective leadership, but it is not the whole piece. And so I think what I tried to do was build our social capital, really put teachers in situations where they were talking effectively and directly about learners and learning, so that it wasn't just meaningless meetings, they were purposeful, and that the decisions that they were making in those meetings about instruction, they were immediately putting into practice, and then they had an opportunity to come back and say whether or not it was working. And so that's how we constructed our instructional programs. Not, I'm telling you what to do and I'm going to make sure you're doing it, but let's look at what research says is high quality instruction. Let's go give it a try. Let's go away and have a play. Let's come back and decide collaboratively on what works in our school, in our context, and what's not working. And when things are not working, let's support each other in making those things better. So those, I think, were the initial seeds planted to help Three Bridges grow into the collaborative success, perhaps, that it is today.
You've described how you lead the school as another way. Could you explain what that phrase means to you in terms of your everyday leadership?
Sure. So, over time, I've eliminated virtually every overt, invasive, interrogative management practice and replaced it with leadership. And that's at every level, not just for me. I would say actually today, very rarely for me. The purpose of doing a lot of this was to create a self-sustaining school, to be a leader who's uncovering a leader, The hero leader paradigm is one that's been proven as a failure over and over again. So what is the other way? Well, I think the other way is looking at what it is we're doing and why we're doing it, and then moving those practices as far away from us as possible and replacing them with things like lesson and learning study, with teacher research groups, with collective responsibility, with decisional capital, giving teachers the opportunity not only to study learners and learning, but then enact decisions that make a difference in the lives of their children. So you hear of schools where teachers are being observed 6 times a year, they're being given a feedback sheet that's coming from someone who is hierarchically above them. And when you ask why that is, why is it that you're observing teachers, often people say, well, it's about consistencies, or it's about practice. We want to make sure that the practice is good enough. Or it's about compliance. We want to make sure they're doing what we've said is best practice in our school. And I don't think anybody would argue that there's a problem with having consistencies in a school. I think most teachers would say that that's a positive thing. I don't think that there would be teachers who would say that high quality practice is something that's a bad thing. I think all teachers inherently want to be their very, very best. So leadership, I think, is at its heart about influence. So if what we want are consistencies, or we want high quality practice, or we want professional people who are growing to be better professionals than they were last week or last month or last year, then it's really about asking, well, under what conditions can we facilitate that happening without putting them under pressure, without making it high stakes, without making them feel like there's a gun to their head? How can we put them in the right soil? So at Three Bridges, those are the kinds of questions that we asked ourselves. What are the conditions that are necessary for professional people to take responsibility for their own learning? Teacher-led learning. And what happens when you pull away the observation and you input something like micro-research or lines of inquiry for professional growth is you see development take off. Because, someone once said to me, you can mandate mediocrity, but you can only unleash greatness. And that's what's happened here. As a leader, I want the teachers in the school to be a better teacher than I was. I want them one day to be a better leader than I am. It's like, being a parent, you want your children to have better opportunities and you have a better life than you had. Well, as a school leader, you should wish the same thing for your staff. I want the teachers here to be the very, very best they can be. The teachers in this school today are better teachers than I was. That's how I know I'm doing the right thing. They're self-regulating, they're inquisitive, they never ever settle. They always want to be better. A healthy dose of self-improvement. But it's because they're leading it on things that they're passionate about. They're able to reflect now without pressure and say, I'm struggling here, and I've heard that you're doing some cool stuff with that. Can you help? And so it's a culture now of self-referral when someone's struggling or someone's uncertain. It's a culture of collaborative development. So the reception teacher is working with the Year 3 teacher to improve. It's about collective responsibility. Nobody at Three Bridges is a classroom teacher. They're school teachers. We here are the stewards of all of our children. There's no sense at Three Bridges being a great teacher if the teacher down the hall is struggling. And those mantras, those beliefs are what fuel the progression here.